What up, perps? Kid Kopi is back in effect. Purple State Party, you know what we're doing here. Repping America, the center, and common sense. Title of this episode, Jesus in Vegas. It's an ode to one of my favorite bands, Chumbawamba. You know, most people know them from the song Tub Thumpin', I Get Knocked Down, But I Get Up Again. But they were much, much more than that song. That was kind of like a soccer fight song. A lot of people in America didn't really get it, you know. They're a very unique band, and you know, they kind of shape a little bit of who I am, because they were basically anarchists, and that's the way I feel. You know, I feel like our government is not working the way it's supposed to. Both sides are at fault. One side seems to be a little bit crazier, and so that's why I tend to go after them a little bit more. But don't get it twisted, folks. Purple State is not Republican or Democrat, all right? It's more about trying to figure out, between those two parties, who's putting up the best candidate. You know, remember those good old days, folks, when, you know, you voted for the best candidate? Didn't matter what letter they had next to their name. You knew they were going to do a good job because they were good people who really stood for America and the common man and the working folk and all that. Yeah, those days are sort of gone to some degree right now. Crazy, crazy world we live in. All right, let's get this started. So first up, Dodgers won the World Series. I'm a lifelong Dodger fan. Not so much of a baseball fan anymore, you know. I could watch it. I love it. I used to play it. I was at one point a city champion. But, you know, I looked up to heaven and I said to my dad, you know, hey, how happy are you right now? Dodgers repeat, Ohtani, you know, Clayton Kershaw got to retire, a World Series champion, you know. I miss my dad a lot. He's a big sports fan. He used to have season tickets to all kinds of teams here in L.A., the old Rams, the Lakers, the Clippers, Dodgers. And as a teacher, he used to use his really good seats, sort of bribe kids to you know, try harder to get their grades up. And he worked with a lot of kids, got a lot of kids on the straight and narrow. So I'm really glad for him. I hope he got to see the game up there. I know he's in heaven. I, for one, believe in heaven, you know. I know that's somewhat weird in today's day and age, you know. But, you know, it's just what I've come to determine is true. It's a little bit of a tangent, but, you know, I just wanted to mention my dad and the Dodgers. So we'll get into some more political stuff here now. So, Prop 50, California's election rigging scheme, it's blasting full steam ahead. And it is an election rigging. I mean, their ads are talking about stopping the Republicans from rigging the election, but essentially what the commercial is saying is the Republicans want to rig the election, so we're going to rig the election. You know? They got Obama on TV and in print now talking about how important it is to rig California elections. And one of the reasons is because, you know, Democrats, I think, have run out of ideas. They've sold out to the left. They want to be progressive, but we've progressed as far as we can progress as a society. I don't really know how much further we need to progress. I mean, you know, progressing as a society is a great thing. I've, you know, been alive long enough to see the differences that makes in people's lives, you know, things as simple as gay marriage, you know. I've seen that come, you know, to fruition, and, you know, I've seen the fact that we are very welcoming to people and their ideas from around the world. Sometimes I think that's a bad thing, but, you know, but, you know, and speaking of Obama, you know, he's backing the white Democrat over the black Republican in the Virginia governor's race. Winsome Sears has the opportunity to become the first black female governor ever, and Obama doesn't want that to happen. And even more shockingly, this one really got me. The NAACP also backs the white Democrat over the black Republican. I mean, she could be the first female black governor ever. And one of the biggest organizations for black people says, now we want the white Democrat. because they're putting party over skin. I mean, that's mind-boggling to me. I don't know what it's. I as a white person, I don't really understand what it's like to be a member of the so-called minority. Okay, I think I would probably want to stick with my kind to some degree. I mean, if it was a toss-up between two candidates, and it's not like Winsome Sears is unqualified. She was the attorney general. She's a very competent lady, and I think she would do a great job. But no, that's not good enough. It's not good enough that she'll be the first black female governor. No, wrong letter next to her name. That's the crazy shit that they play. They scream about DEI. They scream about BLM. But if that person is Republican, boo. I talk about it all the time, so I don't want to go on to it too much. But, Joe Biden even said that. If you're black, you better vote for me. That's what he said. Influencers, politicians, pundits, they all assumed every black person would vote for Kamala Harris. But if you're Republican, but if you're Republican, you're not black. I mean, Candace Owens was called the N-word. Larry Elder was once painted by the LA Times as the black face of white supremacy. And he was called Uncle Tom. They used that kind of language on him because he didn't vote the way they wanted him to vote. I hated Obama. I didn't like his politics. I didn't like his teammates. Damn near everything he did, I hated. But I was glad we finally had our first black president. I could give him that credit. I was really glad that nobody took shots at him. That was, for 2 terms, 8 years, he was there. And America was accepting of it. He was my president. Politics aside, you have to root for diversity. If you're going to preach diversity, you need to root for diversity. But, it's this wackadoodle way of thinking that, it's no wonder that the Islamic extremists are using them. And they are. They are flat out stupid, college educated, and dumb as a fence post. And willing to believe whatever you want to believe. What you tell them to believe, excuse me. I mean, they really do. I mean, the lefties have joined forces with hardline Islamics to terrorize Jewish students on campuses, to organize attacks on ICE, and disrupt life wherever possible. I mean, look at Greta Thunberg. She went from climate change to Gaza. We have organizations out there called Queers for Palestine. But in the end, it's like the show Survivor, if you're familiar with Survivor. You can make an alliance, but as victory grows closer and closer, the alliance breaks up, and one person or one side will prevail. And the left hates Christians for their anti-gay rhetoric, but sides with people who actively murder gays. It's just a con job. Ask the student lefties. Ask all the little socialists in Iran who sided with Khomeini in overthrowing the Shah of Iran. How progressive has Iran become? Not very. They sponsor nations that actively murder gay people and subjugate women. And these same lefties think that other countries in the Middle East are safer for gay people than Israel. That's the level of stupidity these people are showing. They think their progressive ideas meld with Muslims, even as Muslims in Michigan take down pride flags and subjugate women across the globe, like I said. They're not about pride. In Africa, the Muslims often massacre Christians in church while they're praying, but not the other way around. The truth of it is, lefties, if you're listening, which you probably aren't because you're scared of anything outside of your echo chamber, but you have a better chance of a progressive society with Christians or Jews. Many churches and temples openly welcome the LGBT communities. The people who are sponsoring this, Iran and their proxies, are using you. Ask yourself, if you are progressive leaning, if you are lefty leaning, right? Do you really support Sharia law? If all you get from it is taxing rich people to blow money on undeserving people and free health care, is it really worth it? Look at California. California subsidizes drug addicts, illegals, and lazy people, while the hardworking grinders slave at 2 jobs just to pay for Netflix. Yeah, Mamdani. He's put forth all these expensive proposals in New York, child care for all, government-run grocery stores, free buses. And he's planning to pay for all this with tax hikes, especially the city's corporate tax rate, moving it from 7.5% to 11.5%. That's a 4% increase. He claims it'll bring in $5 billion and that New York's economy can afford to support a stronger public sector. Yeah, public sector. It kind of just means you're going to waste money. You're going to have no accountability. Unfortunately, raising that corporate tax rate is going to hinder job growth, and it's going to drive people out of New York. It just will. You know, for example, when this same sort of thing was tried in Britain, 1 out of 6 British companies cut hiring. Sure, some of them still were, but the point is that ultimately all of the countries are going to have to adjust to paying an extra 4% tax rate, and some of them will just simply leave. They'll relocate. They've already had that happen with the exodus of banks from Wall Street to corporate tax havens, such as relocating to Florida, which has cost the city millions in managed assets. They simply cannot do this and watch people leave. That's what businesses do. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce recently estimated the economic effects of a mere 1 percentage point increase in the federal corporate income tax from 21% to 22%. That increase would cost New York's 10th Congressional District, home to the financial district, and Southwest Brooklyn approximately $1.3 billion over 10 years. The rest of the city would be harmed. And that's a 1% increase. Mamdani's proposing 4% increase. Those on the far left will not like the results. You'll get a lot of free stuff, but not a fulfilling life. Costs will soar, and paradise will become unaffordable. That's probably why they paved paradise and put up a parking lot, to store the cars that you can't afford to fuel. You know, there is evidence out there for people to look at what these types of policies will end up costing. You know, right now, Arby's, I don't know if you eat at Arby's, I love Arby's, but they have an ad for their new meat chunks. That's literally what it is, meat chunks. And as usual, it says prices higher in Alaska and Hawaii. I've seen that all my life. Of course, Hawaii and Alaska, it's hard to keep the supply chain going to those two places. But now, it also adds California, Oregon, and Washington. What do they have in common? Wow, everything's frickin' expensive. And the worst part about it is with all of that money, we have not fixed a damn thing here in California. We still have drug addicts running free on the streets, crazy people running free on the streets. The cost of living is completely out of control. People are having to sacrifice left and right just to even get by. Public transport still sucks. It really can't get you anywhere. You're still going to have to walk, and you're going to have to walk down those streets that are just littered with crazy people. Because we've just been giving out money without any guidelines or oversight. And that's the problem with these left-wing policies of tax the rich so we could have all this free shit. How are you going to keep the buses running? As costs go up, you're just going to keep raising taxes? Is that really the plan? Is that really your idea? I mean, is that the Democrat platform right now? We're going to tax the rich, and then we're going to spend money widely. Our friends and family will get rich, and you will get poor. Please vote for us. That's why Prop 50 has to exist. They have to keep rigging elections. They have to. They can't afford not to because their ideas are starting to fall out of favor. You know, I think another place where the Democrat policies are really falling out of favor and people are really seeing it for what it is what happened under Biden. The 10 million plus people that streamed across the border and the effects of these sanctuary cities. You know? Here's one right here. ICE issues detainer for a Honduran man accused of killing Illinois County board member in a head-on crash. Well, he took out more than that. He took out the board member, Michael Clayton, and his wife, Gail, and 2 other passengers, a 72-year-old man and a 66-year-old woman, were taken to the hospital with life-threatening injuries. So this guy, who shouldn't even have been in the country, was driving drunk, crossed the center line, and hit Mr. Clayton's car head-on, killing 2 people and extremely injuring to other people. Of course, Meza, the illegal immigrant, and his passenger were not hurt. Inside the car, they found an extended magazine, ammunition, drugs, and an open container of booze. Meza, the driver, was an illegal immigrant from Honduras who entered the United States at an unknown time. His passenger was an illegal Guatemalan who was released in 2023 under the Biden not open border policy. Then when they tried to arrest this scumbag who killed these people, Illinois ignored the retainer. They ignored it because of their sanctuary policies. ICE had to show up and arrest this guy as he was coming out of jail. It's ridiculous. You had him in custody. He was driving drunk and killed people, and you want to protect him. Oh, okay. Meanwhile, here in California, we've had 2 shootings. I mean, this is ridiculous. We have a guy here who, Carlos Jimenez, who was told to move by, he was trying to block traffic, block ICE agents with his car. He then tried to back into an officer. He got shot. Now he's going to get arrested. He's going to go on trial, and he's going to spend time in jail. He's going to ruin his life over this. And if that isn't worse, there was a TikTok influencer who was going around telling people where ICE was going to be, trying to dox them, things like that. And he also tried to ram his car into law enforcement. And he was shot. And now he'll go to jail. And he threw his life away. I'm not saying ICE is perfect in their job. I'm not. I have a lot of complaints with the way they are handling themselves. But citizens getting involved, citizens trying to run over officers is not the answer, okay? It's not. I particularly don't have the answer. I don't know what it's like to be out on the streets right now and to fear ICE. I know they're being heavy-handed. I know that. But when you look at where they're being heavy-handed, a lot of these places are sanctuary states and sanctuary cities where there are other solutions. I don't want to get off on that tangent, but they are convincing people that that's the thing to do. And it's the left. It's not the right. The right's not telling people, hey, go out and throw your life away. There was another one here about the raid at the Glass House Farms, a weed grow operation. And they're talking about one of the guys that was picked up, and he was in the country illegally. His wife was in the country undocumented. And they had a newborn daughter who was a U.S. citizen, a so-called anchor baby, as they say. But the article quotes somebody as saying, many of these people had established deep roots, had children who were U.S. citizens. Now some of these children will be forced to follow their families to unfamiliar places to grow away from the place of their birth. Well, that's why we have a process. If we want to redo the process, if we want to make the process cheaper and easier for people, I'm all for that. But what we can't continue to do as a society is cry over people's bad choices. People make bad choices. People make wrong choices. There are ways of coming to this country. We give out work visas and things like that. There are ways of coming here. And that's the part that's being forgotten, is we act like these people had no choice but to sneak across our border. And boo-hoo-hoo, look what's happening to them. Again, a lot of this falls on the states where this is happening. ICE agents can only do what they can do. They only will search where they think they're going to find people. Local law enforcement might have better ideas, but I've covered this before. But I bring it up because it just shows how the left is using young people and influencers and people like that to do their dirty work and pay the cost. It's one thing to protest and hold up signs and raise awareness of what's going on. It's another to directly interfere with police officers doing their jobs, whether you agree with it or not. Stand back, let them do their jobs, and then provide aid. If you want to help these people, these people have had the opportunity to self-deport and get on the short list. There are solutions out there other than throwing your life away for these causes. And that's what they do. And it's funny because the left is in bed right now with the Islamic extremists, and the Islamic extremists convince young people to strap on a bomb and walk into a crowded mall and blow themselves up. And these two sides are out there. I don't see that coming from the right. I don't see people on the right being convinced to go out and throw away their lives on these things. It's stupid to. It's not a battle worth giving your life for. It's not a hill to die on. And that's one of the ugliest things I see out of the left, is they are convincing young people to throw their lives away. So on Halloween, my daughter got married. She met her husband when she was 12 and he was 13 in an Overwatch lobby. And for the next several years, they knew each other and started sort of online dating. I'm not sure how that works because I've never done that, but they were online dating. And he finally flew out here with his family. And in the middle of a very beautiful Japanese garden, he proposed to my daughter. And on Halloween, my wife, who got officiant status, performed the wedding ceremony. I was there as Jack Skellington. And we streamed it. The stream went around the world. And, they had pictures of their friends up. Some of their friends are, trans. They're gay. They have alcoholic parents. They have divorced parents, and they're struggling to figure out what they're going to do with their life, where they're going to live. They really come from some bad situations. And then, as I told my daughter, I said, you're a lot like Jesus. One of the ads that's running right now, He Gets Us, is talking about all the people who are sick of things, sick of being harassed, sick of being downtrodden, right? Sick of being broke. And those were the people that Jesus surrounded himself with. People see Christian Catholic churches and things like that, and they see some of the bad things that come out of these religions. Jesus was never about a church. He was never about man influencing, man interpreting. Jesus stood on a rock and he preached to the downtrodden, the disenfranchised, the harassed. That's what my daughter does. And Purple State's doing the same. We don't listen to, rich lobbyists and brainwashed students and suburban moms looking for meaning in their life. Right? We care about the grinders. We care about the people. I might vote Republican, but I've got nothing but love in my heart for the LGBT community. I might not like trans athletes coming into women's sports. I might have some problems with how they're running the bathrooms in high schools and places like that. But I'm also looking for the solutions for these things. Because Jesus has taught me to love people and to treat people as my equal, and to not sit there and interpret the words of the Bible and cherry pick the parts that I want and the parts that I don't want. But, like I've said in previous episodes, that might be our duty. But one of the things that I learned from reading the Bible, and I've read it cover to cover, is that it's not our job to judge. Okay? I'm not supposed to judge people's worthiness for heaven. Okay? If God thinks that being gay is wrong, let God bring that up. All right? Let him bring it up. It's the same thing with Purple State Party. Okay? I rail against the left for some of the reasons that we've talked about here today. I don't like that they are causing people to throw their lives away. I don't like the fact that they monetize climate change and then blow money. I don't like the fact that they leave people to suffer and die on the streets and then call it compassion. Those are lies. And I don't really like that the left is getting in bed with Muslims while hating on Christians. I think that is awful, and I think it's wrong. But that's the one thing we have to do. You know, I believe in making America great again. I wouldn't say I'm part of the MAGA movement, but I am MAGA. I would add an S to America and make it America's, because my concern is North America, Central America, and South America. Those are our neighbors. That's where I want our industry. I don't want it in China. It's a godless society. Communists are godless. And that's what makes what's going on right now so interesting, that the communists and the Islamic extremists are pairing up together here in America and in places like Britain. You know, in Britain recently, they had 9 people who were stabbed. 10 people were stabbed on the train, but 9 of them were severe enough to go to the hospital. And one of the comments summed it up. If I say anything about the attackers under English law, I'll face more jail time than the stabbers. There's cases where people have been attacked, women have been attacked, and the immigrant, the asylum seeker, basically told the girl, you can say what you want, but I'm untouchable. Why are we bending over for one religion while chastising another religion? Makes no sense to me. Jesus took everybody in, and that's how we need to be. Now, not our immigration policy, because that's just freaking crazy. But in our heart, we can love these people. We can want what's best for them. When I read about that immigrant who was picked up at the weed farm, and how he has a daughter who was born here, I want a solution for him. I want a way for him to become legalized, to be documented, to be vetted, and to be a member of America, a place that I consider the greatest place on earth, in the universe. I don't know what the fuck is out there in the universe, but America is better than all of it. Our ideals are better than any country's ideals. Pure and simple as far as I'm concerned. That's the way I look at it. You know, my colors are purple and gray because politics, red and blue, nah, it's purple. Most subjects are not black and white. But you know what is black and white? America is great. We don't have draconian laws that subjugate people. We don't execute people because they're not following God's law. But at the same time, we need the structure, the rules, and the love that Jesus, Christianity, even Judaism brings. But the left has turned on all of that. And they've gone wackadoodle. And so now I have to sit here and I have to rail against one side, and I can't talk about what's going on with the right except in brief snippets. And here's the brief snippet. End the fucking shutdown. I understand that the Democrats want money that is eventually going to be used for illegal aliens. Okay? That needs to stop. And the way that needs to stop is that Democrats need to regain control of their party. Okay? But what the Republicans should do right now is end it and then come back and fix the loopholes that allow the states to do this. If that can't be reached, we've got problems. But what I try to do is I try to look at other people. What are their reactions? How does that influence, how I feel? Well, one Democrat, John Fetterman, of all freaking people, is upset with his party and wants to end the shutdown. If John Fetterman is brave enough to stand up to the Democrats and say, you're wrong on this issue, then I have to assume that the Democrats are wrong. Much like if the Republicans stand up and say something is wrong, you kind of have to really think about that and go, maybe they are. This is not the United States cult of Trump. This is not the United States of progressive ideas. This is the United States of America. We know what we're doing. We have a framework that works. And we need to start doing that. But above all, we have to keep love in our hearts. That's what I mention at the end of every show. I mentioned loving one another. Because if we don't have love for our fellow man, we are fucking doomed. Pure and simple. This has been a rambling episode. I'm really sorry about that. I appreciate you sticking around if you stuck around. I'm Kid Copious. I'm Purple State Party. And so are you. Love one another. Keep on grinding. And, you know, the best therapy I can prescribe is to just dance it out.